Okay, so now let's get into something that we didn't do last week that I wanted to do, but Peter wasn't here.
I know I
So
messed up last week. My
well,
apologies.
he
But you held
sucks.
it down. You did great.
He sucks.
You
So
probably could do the
it's
whole thing without me anyway.
no. We can't do it without you. We can't do it without you now. That won't work.
Then it would just be
So
the fight guy.
it will be the fight guy. It will be the fight guy. So we're gonna call this picture time with Peter. Now,
What?
picture time with Peter. So I want to put up a picture right now, and I
Oh,
want you to tell me the story of this
oh,
picture. All right.
yeah.
Bam.
Oh, me and DK.
That's right.
So that actual so for the people that are watching right now, um, I started in boxing back in 1994, and I began working for Don King, in which I spent a decade during that 94 forward. So some great years. That particular picture was me and Don at the IBF convention in 1996 in Toronto.
Mm.
So, which was an interesting convention. But nonetheless, I mean, that's a much younger version of me. Now, on the other side of Don is Mike Tyson,
Mm.
who's not in the picture, who's not in that particular picture with me and Don. But on the other side of Don, at Don's table, is Mike. So, that's a 1996 Don King, Peter Kahn. I got the tuxedo on.
You do.
Um, Back in the day, Bob Lee was the IBF president back then. And I was 2 years into what was a I guess you could look at it as like a golden era in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, Mike Tyson, Felix Trinidad, Terry Norris, Ricardo Lopez, Julio Cesar Chavez, all those guys were still fighting.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some big fights, and that was in the era. We didn't have cell phones, we didn't have the internet, no social media. It was like a different world. You had to be present.
Mm-hmm.
Hence, that picture was actually taken with film. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
it was definitely a great time in my. When I look back at it, for me, it was such an education. Such an education. Just I appreciate it more now than I probably did back then,
Mm-hmm.
because I really didn't understand. Back then I was a kid. Now being an adult, and having been in this business for 25 years, I appreciate it. Appreciate it a lot more. As far as the experience, and the lessons I've learned along the way.
Yeah, Ness Mendoza is calling you Sir Kahn now.
Well, I appreciate that, and hopefully, as we go here, we'll get some good stories out of some of these pictures. But
yeah, who's the lady? Who's the lady behind you? It looks like
some woman that was excited to see Mike Tyson. That's like was running to that side of it was a big round table, and I remember because just like they do today, all the sanctioning bodies have their annual convention.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular one I remember was Toronto.
Okay.
And it was a wild time because you had to be present.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't just post something.
Mm-hmm.
Like I look back and I'm like, man, if social media existed back then, I'd be like a little star. You know what I mean? Like with that access, because but it wouldn't have had, you wouldn't have had the mystique that time had. Because no one was overexposed.
Mm-hmm.
Like in order to see what Mike Tyson was doing, you had to be with him, or you had to wait for like KO magazine to come out,
right,
or some special interview on television.
Yeah,
because at the time there were no other outlets. It was either print media or television, or you had to be there. Yeah. So maybe we'll get some pictures of me and Mike down the road here, and we can tell some stories about some of those fights. But I spent a lot of time around him back then, pre-face tattoo, early mid 90s,
pre-face tattoo.
all those fights, Peter McNeely, Buster Mathis Jr.,
Wait a
Bruce
minute. So
Seldon,
you took
Frank
a
Bruno.
what did he do? Take a what in his pants?
What?
Peter McNelly. What
Oh
did he
yeah,
say?
yeah,
Take
a dump, a
no, it
dump.
wasn't a dump. It was something. It was
Yeah,
another.
you
It
must
was
have
a
a.
more
You must
kiddie
have a.
word.
No, you guys must have a big dump in your pants.
A big dump in your pants. Oh God.
But no, but that was
Oh,
that. That was that whole ride, which was McNeely. It was Buster Mathis Jr., Bruce Seldon, Frank Bruno, Holyfield. I
for
mean, and
sure.
that was just, and I was there for all of that. So it was, and Trinidad, seeing Felix Trinidad win his world title at 19, I think it was, against Maurice
Yeah.
Blocker, and
Yeah.
and then just that whole thing, and Chavez, losing to Frankie Randall.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, still just being around Chavez while he was still fighting.
Yeah.
Like you talked about, El Finito, saw so many of his fights
Yeah.
in person. Terry Norris. Um, Trying to think back who else were some of the and I tell this story and I'll find a picture, since we're doing this picture thing, I'll find a picture. But and I've told you this, that in the office,
Hmm.
I shared a cubicle with a one Abel Sanchez,
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
who, many people only know as like the trainer of Triple G.
Right.
I mean, I know Abel's the guy that like hung a heavy bag in my garage. You know what I mean?
Right.
That went to work with me every day. And at the time, he was training Orlin Norris and Terry
Hmm.
Norris and Miguel Angel Gonzalez. And so there's a lot of good stories, a lot of history. But
For sure.
been around this for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's why we like to talk boxing because it's so much history involved and so much perspective because a lot of times we think that we know uh, something about
Right.
a sport or we think that we know something about an industry, but you only know it from your perspective, you know.
Yeah. And I've learned to also realize that like I respect everybody's opinion. You
Hmm.
know, I think there's a level. I wouldn't say that people aren't experts, right? I just
Hmm.
think it's based on experience.
Yeah.
Experience is the best form of expertise in something like this. That's why like I love watching behind the scenes things or like movies or stories like on other sports because I love getting a peek behind the curtain.
Hmm.
I feel like I get to live that in boxing and have lived that.
Yeah.
But I
For
don't
sure.
impose it on people
Hmm.
because I don't want to diminish anyone else's opinion because we all see the same things.
Right. Right.
I just have a different take because I know a hell of a lot more than I even say on these videos.
Hmm.
Because if I did, then nobody would talk. Then I would,
Right.
I'd have no business.
Right. Well,
So
you can't have
it's a
businessless
fine
people.
line.
It's a fine line. It's a fine line. So